Hey everybody, this video is about the rationale for the challenge course. So why challenge and why now? Okay, so the cold hard fact that we will die is the biggest human challenge and the deepest existential fear underlying much of our dissatisfaction and discontentedness, yet intimately linked with our awareness of death, is actually a fear of being alive, of expressing ourselves. Ernest Becker wrote that the world, nature, and the mystery of our existence within such an enormously powerful place is simply too much for us, too overwhelming. Thus, we feel small, vulnerable, and frightened to express our true being. Accepting that morality and suffering are facts of life and that these challenges define us is the key to overcoming our limits. This willingness, acceptance, and commitment to facing the challenge of being human is a crucial part of growing up and growing in wisdom and wellness. So here's the great news. You will always have challenge in your life, but you get to decide how you define your challenges and how to relate and respond to them. You have that freedom, just in case you didn't know it. But as Spider-Man said, with freedom comes responsibility, and that responsibility is yet another challenge. The only way to build your capacity for challenge is to do challenge. Muscles only get stronger when you use them. It's that simple. So don't try to complicate it just because you're afraid of this process. As the Buddha said, life is suffering, but this is the reality that many of us have been conditioned to ignore rather than learn to accept as part of human nature and train ourselves to grapple with. To distract ourselves, seek pleasure, and lie to ourselves helps us feel safe and cope with a deep truth about our nature, our mortality. And of course, those distractions and pleasures are what helps the economy boom, at least for those who profit from capitalizing on our human ignorance, weakness, and emotion-fueled behavior. So in this course, when you explore your challenges, you may realize how powerful cultural conditioning influences how you define your challenge, how you define challenge as a concept, and how you define your own challenges and how you relate to them. You will be asked to notice your conditioning. So materialist, consumerist values, coupled with pervasive media technology, aggressively sells an intentional avoidance of challenge, personal discipline, and sacrifice. Advertising explicitly and subconsciously inculcates us to live pain-free, to pretend, and to project false images of ourselves based on the presupposition that we, as authentic beings, are inadequate, we're incomplete, we're not good enough, smart enough, beautiful enough, and so on. We are seduced by constant distractions that play on our fear, irrationality, our ego, and its desires and our emotions. In addition to lobbying for reform of the external influences upon us, we also have a duty to ourselves to sort through the messaging from the standpoint of our shared human values, and then respond and make healthy choices appropriate for ourselves. If our choices are rooted in healthy human values, those that support our nature and our humanity, they'll be good for us, for each of us, and improve the lives of our fellow humans. So waking up to the truth about ourselves and our challenges and limitations is liberating. However, it can also be alarming and downright painful. Freedom is not free, as they say. It always comes with a price, with sacrifice. Something has to die for other things to grow. So one of the great challenges in modern life is anxiety, which in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It just is. At the root of our current American health crisis is chronic stress from excessive and severe anxiety. This is unsurprising given our culture's unhealthy and misguided values and our inability to come together to cooperatively solve problems through rational dialogue rather than emotional outrage. We are overwhelmed by information that is untrustworthy, continually changing, often pointing us in nefarious and unhealthy directions. A pervasive relativism and nihilism is spreading like cancer in virtual life. It's a crisis of meaning. Much of psychotherapy works from the premise that anxiety is our deepest human motivation, and in that sense, it drives us to learn, to defend ourselves, to cope, survive, and thrive. If we stop learning, we start dying. In this way, anxiety is not the problem or the devil incarnate, it's an important motivator to work toward values and meaning. When not excessive, anxiety serves an adaptive purpose and can foster growth and wellness. It's a terrible idea to take a pill or utilize any other method of avoiding stress and anxiety. A better idea is to accept its value and transform it, working with it rather than against it for wellness. Mindfulness-based psychotherapeutic approaches like Marsha Linehan's dialectical behavior therapy and Stephen Hayes' acceptance and commitment therapy are values-oriented treatments designed to help individuals grapple with existential challenges to develop a life worth living. That is, one of meaning and purpose. We all need a reason to get out of bed in the morning and face the day. Good approaches to healing and helping people face their challenges include knowing the whys that motivate, the values to aim at, to be oriented in the world, to feel secure enough to learn rather than being overwhelmed and paralyzed by excessive anxiety, grapple with the obstacles to freedom, and fully actualize as one's true self. When you live life without standards or hierarchies of value, you can feel quite lost and fearful, defensive, and disoriented. Valueless living, a human experience without direction and purpose, results in a lack of awe and fulfillment. That is, a lack of feeling full or whole, and a lack of testing oneself to grow and thrive, say, living with the attitude of, why bother face challenge, it's not worth it, is the same thing as saying life is meaningless. Becoming clearer about our values that help us develop as more fully human rather than less, knowing our whys for our choices and responses to what the world challenges us with, will help orient us in the world, both within our inner landscape and on the outer landscape. We need purpose and meaning to manage the existential anxiety of being human. We need to feel safely oriented in order to learn and grow to our full potential. Strengthening our capacities, our ability to respond or responsibility, and our discipline helps us to live out our values, to act them out in the world, to actualize with purpose and be fulfilled, wise and well, if not happy and comfortable by default. Values and discipline provide order and security when it seems the rest of the world are caught up in the chaos of living according to materialism, consumerism, nihilism, hedonism, and relativism. I believe that becoming more human, more united as human, and developing our shared humanity is the challenge of our age. So finally, just a word about parenting and safety. Some of us have been raised by well-meaning, yet fearful parents who create overly safe spaces for us to live with. Essentially, we're trained to stay in comfort zones, which may have made us inadvertently weak and even more anxious about the big scary world of challenge and mortality. Safety is critically essential for learning and venturing out into this big scary world with a minimum sense of security, a sense of self. But too much of anything in the extreme can have debilitating effects. So balance is key, and overprotection ought not be the predominant way to respond to challenge, nor should the other extreme, authoritarian, hyperdiscipline, or excessive oppression. Balance is key. So directly, openly, bravely, facing our suffering, our challenges intrinsic to being human, directly opposes modern commercially created narratives that promote pleasure, happiness, and getting people to buy into the pretense that wellness, goodness, and health are found through permanence, comfort, and pleasure. Such narratives foster imbalanced or extreme dependency on externals rather than self-knowledge and self-reliance. But being autonomous does not mean you live on an isolated island unto yourself where you must bear your life alone, nor does it mean you should lose your individual identity and responsibility for facing challenge through over-reliance on others, or to cede your identity or dissolve into the group. Each human being has got to be individually willing and able, according to each person's constitution, to face challenge to become stronger, so that each of us can work together with our fellow humans to face the challenges that demand collective social effort to manage. We need one another. Relationships are critically important for our survival and our fullest actualization, and for the group's fullest actualization. Of course, it would be better to have healthy individuals in the group, offering their diverse and unique talents and strengths for sustained cooperative and creative development and growth. If you think about it, the human race has managed existing and progressing together rather well, albeit imperfectly and not without massive amounts of pain and suffering. I wonder now, are we suffering better? Finally, a word about education. Developing a willingness and commitment to learning about ourselves and our human nature is a big human challenge. It's even more challenging to do having been inculcated in the Western utilitarian efficiency model and schooled in institutions that focus on outcomes, comparison, and competition. Our educational system teaches us to be efficient and utilitarian, as it was created to serve industrialism in an age gone by. We're often taught to use hacks and shortcuts to avoid a deep learning approach that requires challenge, sacrifice, persistence, and change. We are always in a hurry because we've been taught to be that way, to get to the end, to win, to finish quickly and efficiently with the least amount of effort. We simply develop the habits of bypassing toil and persistence and neglect a willingness to fail repeatedly to learn. We are not process-oriented enough to balance our hyper-outcomes focus. We want results now. We don't practice patience and force people to suppress their natural desire to engage deeply with the rich and character-building journey of problem-solving and grappling with challenge that is instinctual and necessary for proper development and full self-actualization. We simply don't make time for that. Learning for developing inner wisdom is the missing curriculum both in our schools and in our approach to parenting. Teaching kids to grapple with challenges, to willingly accept the responsibility and the sacrifice required to grow and thrive will help them form healthy human identity. Learning to love one's fate and learn from pain to define ourselves and understand who we are is wisdom. Pills and easy quick way outs or away from facing any discomfort or learning from our pain and negative emotions has become more and more typical. Safe spaces are all the rage. When we work from fear and discourage anyone from leaving their comfort zones, lest they experience oppression, we are merely encouraging experiential avoidance, denial, and further ignorance of our human nature and the self-actualization process. We stunt growth when we refuse to accept challenge and willingly engage with it for balance, wholeness, meaning, and vitality. Clearly and honestly articulating our challenges within our inner landscape, facing challenge, and making the necessary sacrifices involved to grow is a commitment. It's hard work, involves suffering, which is why many continue to ignore it, stay in denial, and often resist it. Life is hard. Although it appears to be easier and almost a natural default to remain forever in one's comfort zone, evolution has taught us that this is a maladaptive strategy that opposes survival, and we must become more physically and psychologically fit by living the heavy weight of the challenges that come with being who we are, and that is human.